Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they talk too much and do too little. They announce their goals, chase compliments, wait for support, and when the applause doesn't come, their motivation disappears. But here's the truth. Every serious transformation begins in silence. You don't need to tell anyone what you're doing. You need to do it. This video is not for those who want fast praise. It's for those who are ready to build something so solid, so real, that it no longer needs to be explained. We're going to walk through the Stoic truth behind silent focus, quiet discipline, and how to win without announcing a single move. If you've ever felt the pressure to prove yourself, to post every step, or to explain your routine to people who don't understand your vision, this is your invitation to stop, to reclaim your energy, to start building for you. Listen carefully, and listen more than once. Let this be a voice you come back to, on the mornings you want to give up, on the nights you doubt your direction. This message will grow stronger every time you return to it. Share it with someone you know who is silently rebuilding. And if this resonates with you, leave a comment below and tell us, what are you choosing to build in silence? Make sure you subscribe, because here we don't just talk, we build. Quietly, relentlessly, until it's undeniable. 1. Silence is the beginning of discipline. Discipline doesn't begin when you act. It begins the moment you don't react. The moment you feel the urge to speak, to announce, to share what you're planning, and you don't. That's the real starting point of transformation. You see, the first instinct for most people when they decide to change something in their life is to tell someone, to post a story, to update their circle. Whether it's a new fitness habit, a morning routine, a business idea, or a commitment to quit something toxic, the default urge is to be seen doing it. But that urge is the first trap. The second you speak it, your brain feels like you've already done something important. You get a sense of progress before you've earned it. And that feeling, it's counterfeit confidence. It doesn't build anything. It just replaces the discomfort of change with the comfort of attention. And discipline cannot grow in comfort. Real discipline begins in silence. When you feel the itch to explain but stay still, when you take the first step, waking up earlier, resisting an old habit, choosing focus over distraction, and don't tell a soul, because that silence is not empty. It's fuel. It's the fire under the surface that no one sees, but it's burning, slowly, precisely with purpose. The same way a candle brightens a room without making a sound, your habits, done privately, quietly, begin to illuminate who you're becoming. There's a power to that kind of energy. Because when you're silent, no one can question your path, interrupt your pace, or dilute your intention with their opinion. You're not building for performance. You're building for permanence. We live in a world addicted to visibility. People chase recognition for things they haven't finished. They crave likes, approval, feedback, applause, for effort that hasn't even begun. But the Stoic path teaches us something different. It reminds us that the loudest actions are often the weakest, that real growth happens when nobody's watching, and that discipline isn't about the big, flashy effort. It's about what you repeat in silence when no one is checking in. That is the kind of quiet discipline that lasts. Silence also protects your mental clarity. The more you speak about what you haven't built, the more you scatter your focus. Every conversation you have about your goal takes a little energy from the actual work. That energy leak is invisible at first, but over time it adds up. You start talking more than doing, planning more than executing, convincing more than becoming, and that's when momentum dies. In contrast, the person who decides to stay quiet builds tension, inner focus, and direction. Each day they show up, they add another invisible brick to a wall of strength. Eventually, people notice. But by then, the builder doesn't need recognition, because what they've become is stronger than anyone's opinion. It's also important to understand that silence doesn't mean isolation. It means selectivity. You're not cutting off connection, you're cutting off leakage. You don't owe updates. You don't need to narrate every phase of your self-improvement. The more you share, the more you invite distortion. Unnecessary opinions, misunderstood reactions, even subtle doubt from people who mean well. But when you withhold, when you keep your process to yourself, you build from clarity. You're not explaining, you're executing. And there's something else that silence trains within you. self-validation. When nobody claps and you still keep going, you become someone with internal power. Someone who doesn't depend on a reminder to stay consistent. That kind of mental strength builds a mindset that doesn't break easily. You're not moved by external chaos. You're not distracted by how slow or quiet the process feels. You trust it because it's yours. And because you know the seed grows best when left underground, untouched, undisturbed, and focused on one thing, becoming. So the next time you feel that pull to post, to tell someone what you're working on, to explain why you're changing, pause. Ask yourself, is this for progress or for comfort? Is this for growth or for attention? And if the answer isn't crystal clear, return to the silence, because that's where the work begins. That's where the real strength is built. And that's how you earn a discipline that doesn't need to speak, because it already shows. 2. Letting go of the need for recognition is true freedom. One of the deepest traps that keeps people stuck is the quiet addiction to being seen. You don't always notice it at first. It hides itself well behind the desire to be a good worker, a responsible person, someone who is on track. But underneath all of that often lies a hidden need, the craving for recognition. You might have experienced it yourself. You sacrifice your weekend to stay ahead. You say no to something easy and yes to something disciplined. And what happens? No one claps. No one says thank you. You check your phone, your inbox, your circle, nothing. And that silence stings more than you expected. But here's the lesson. That sting is a gift, because it reveals something most people never confront. Recognition has become a leash. You didn't do the work just to grow. You did it for applause. And the moment you stop getting it, you start questioning the value of what you're doing. That's not freedom. That's dependency dressed up as virtue. Letting go of recognition means reclaiming your energy. It means being able to build without needing to be seen building. It means being okay with silence, with invisibility, with the long stretches of effort that no one ever hears about. And that is where real strength begins. The Stoics understood this long before the modern world ever did. They didn't measure progress by public praise. They measured it by internal scoreboards. They didn't ask, did they notice? They asked, did I improve? When you adopt that mindset, everything shifts. You stop moving for others. You stop adjusting your pace to meet the expectations of people who aren't even walking your road. You stop needing applause because your discipline becomes its own reward. That's where clarity grows. That's where your energy gets sharp, focused, untouched by distraction. Think about this in today's terms. How often do you see someone do something good, then ruin it by broadcasting it? Someone helps a stranger, and instead of just doing it, they film it for views. The moment they press record, it's no longer about the act. It's about being seen doing the act. That's how most people approach goals. They don't want deep transformation. They want to be congratulated for intending to change. But the truth is, intention doesn't build anything. Action does. Quiet action. Undocumented, unshared, unrewarded. That's the soil where discipline takes root. It doesn't matter if the world knows you're trying. It matters if you are trying. And when you stop reaching for recognition, you finally free up the mental strength to keep going, regardless of who's watching. This freedom isn't just a feeling, it's a strategy. Because once you're no longer emotionally tied to being seen, you become more stable, more consistent. You stop riding the highs and lows of attention. You stop chasing praise that vanishes the moment you slip up. You build something slower, deeper, and unshakable. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. You don't need to convince people that you're doing the right thing. You just do it. And over time, those results speak far more powerfully than any post or announcement ever could. The right people will see the change. The wrong people never mattered anyway. Letting go of recognition also teaches you something essential about identity. When you stop defining yourself by what others affirm, you start building a self that no one can take from you. It's quiet, yes, but it's solid. And that's what the Stoics called real strength. Being independent of outcomes, detached from judgment, and fully committed to your principles regardless of whether anyone notices. In a world obsessed with external validation, choosing to step away from the spotlight becomes a kind of rebellion. But it's the kind of rebellion that leads to clarity, confidence, and calm. And if you're wondering how to start, The answer is simple. Begin by catching yourself in the moment. The next time you finish something good and you feel that urge to share it, pause. Ask yourself, who am I trying to impress? And why? If the answer doesn't align with your values, return to silence. Let your work be enough. Let your growth be private. And let your future be shaped by what you repeat, not what you reveal. Because the day you no longer need recognition to stay consistent is the day you become truly free. That's the power of letting go. That's how you build quiet strength that lasts. 3. Quiet daily action builds unshakable consistency. Let's not romanticize it. Consistency is boring. It's not loud, it's not flashy, and it certainly won't earn you a standing ovation. It's not about breakthroughs or highlight reels. It's about the same small choices made daily, without fanfare, without witnesses, and without applause. But in that simplicity lies the most powerful transformation you can create, because consistency is not built in noise, it thrives in silence. The more you talk about what you're doing, the less energy you have to actually do it. But when you strip away the need to announce, to explain, to perform, you're left with one thing: action. And that's where the shift begins. Think about someone in your neighborhood who runs every morning at 5 a.m. You've never seen him post a picture. You've never heard him mention it. But a year later, he looks different. Not just physically, but mentally. He's steadier, calmer, sharper. He didn't become that way by accident. He became that way because his quiet choices added up while nobody was watching. That's what consistency does. It sneaks up on the outside world, but it builds everything on the inside. It doesn't ask for credit. It doesn't stop for attention. It keeps going because the habit has become part of who you are. And when something becomes part of you, it doesn't break under pressure. It doesn't disappear when motivation fades. It's embedded. It holds. In a world obsessed with instant results, this kind of consistency feels old-fashioned. But that's exactly why it works. Most people chase motivation, chase the next new method, chase the feeling of starting again. But real growth doesn't come from excitement. It comes from repetition, from waking up on the hard days and doing what needs to be done even when you don't feel like it. That's how unshakable people are made. Not in one giant leap, but in 10,000 quiet steps. And this is where Stoic thinking becomes more than a philosophy. It becomes a survival strategy. The Stoics knew that the world would always be unpredictable, chaotic, and full of noise. Their answer? Build habits so strong, so silent, they could carry you through any storm. No matter the chaos outside, your internal rhythm stays steady. The danger today is in mistaking movement for progress. You scroll through productivity content. You write lists, you post intentions, but unless you act daily, quietly, none of it matters. People will try to sell you shortcuts, but no shortcut builds resilience. And resilience is what you need when the plan falls apart, when life gets heavy, when progress stalls. That's why quiet discipline matters. It's not just about being productive, it's about becoming reliable to yourself. When you build that trust, when you show up for yourself each day, you develop a kind of inner power no one can give you and no one can take away. That's the essence of consistency. It's not what others see, it's what you become. And make no mistake, there will be days when you feel like nothing's changing. That's part of it. There will be long stretches where you wonder if it's working. But that's where most people quit. That's where you must go deeper. The real gains always happen just after most people give up. The body doesn't change in the first few workouts. The business doesn't grow in the first few weeks. The mind doesn't quiet down in the first few meditations. But if you keep going, without needing confirmation, without needing recognition, you break through. Slowly, silently, unstoppably. Eventually, the people around you start to notice. They ask how you did it, but you won't have much to say. Not because you're hiding anything, but because you were too busy doing the work to craft a story. And honestly, you don't need one. Your results speak a language louder than words. And that's the irony. Those who work in silence are the ones who eventually make the most noise through impact, not through talk. So remember this, you don't rise because you're loud. You rise because you last. You become unshakable, not because you have more talent, but because you showed up more often. You kept your head down, you followed through, and in that quiet, unnoticed effort, you built something solid. That's how consistency becomes power. That's how silence becomes your edge. And that's how you win. Not by announcing every move, but by repeating the right ones until they define you. 4. Those who talk too much are not ready. There's a pattern you start to notice when you've been around long enough. The person who talks the loudest in the room, the one who constantly declares their next big move, who floods every conversation with goals, intentions, and promises, is almost always the one who doesn't follow through. They speak as if momentum can be built with words alone. But time always reveals what noise tries to hide. You check in months later, and nothing has moved. The business never launched. The habit never stuck. The breakthrough never came. Why? Because talking is easier than trying. It gives the illusion of progress without the discomfort of action. It replaces pressure with performance. But no real discipline is born in performance. It's built in silence. It's like fog before a storm. It spreads quickly, covers everything, but delivers no real impact. It looks like something's about to happen, but nothing ever does. That's what over-talking is, a distraction disguised as preparation. The truth is, when you're truly ready, you don't need to say much. Real builders, real thinkers, real warriors, they don't speak prematurely. They speak when the work is done, and even then, their words are fewer than their results. Because they understand that attention dilutes energy. The more time you spend explaining your path, the less time you spend walking it. Readiness isn't loud, it's quiet, composed, focused. And that kind of readiness shows up in your habits, not your voice. A close friend once admitted something that stuck with me. He said, "Every time I explain what I'm planning, I lose the hunger to do it." That sentence hit like a truth most people are afraid to say out loud. But it's real. Because the moment you talk, you start giving yourself credit for something you haven't earned. You feel rewarded before you've even stepped onto the field. And that's dangerous. It drains the drive, it weakens the edge. My friend stopped sharing. He made a private vow to himself and disappeared into his routine. 6 months later, he had built a small business, lost weight, and found mental clarity. Not because he announced a plan, but because he protected it with silence. That's what readiness looks like. No noise, just movement. We live in a world that teaches people to speak before they're steady, to post before they've practiced, to declare goals for likes instead of results. But the Stoic mindset rejects that. It teaches that the quieter you become, the more you can hear your own mind. The less you need others to validate your vision, the more seriously you'll take your actions. When you're truly grounded, you stop asking people to believe in you. You stop needing their buy-in because you've already bought into yourself. And that inner conviction cannot be built in public. It's forged in solitude. Silence is a kind of filter. It separates those who are hungry from those who are performing hunger. It reveals who's doing the work for attention and who's doing the work because the work needs to be done. And that's where the strongest people grow. In the quiet. In the invisible hours, in the places where the only witness to your grind is the man in the mirror. If you're really about it, you don't need to broadcast it. You'll show it. Not in one big leap, but in consistent action. Not in explanations, but in results. And when the results start to show, you won't need to explain a thing. The change in your posture, your energy, and your discipline will say more than any announcement ever could. So the next time you feel the need to speak on what's coming, stop. Ask yourself if speaking serves your vision or just feeds your ego. Most of the time, it's the latter. Save your voice. Invest it in your discipline. Let the results build in silence. Let them mature behind the scenes. And when the time is right, your transformation will speak for itself. Stronger, clearer, and louder than any words could. Because those who talk too much are not ready. But those who wait, work, and keep their mouths shut, they're not just ready, they're dangerous. And when they arrive, the world won't have seen them coming, but it won't be able to ignore what they've built. 5. You don't need to explain what you're building. There's a strange pressure that sneaks into your life the moment you start changing. People begin to notice your absence. They ask why you've been distant, why you stopped going out, why your answers are shorter than they used to be. It usually sounds polite, curious, even supportive. So what have you been up to? Why don't you come around anymore? You seem different lately. But underneath that surface lies a deeper tension. Their discomfort with your growth, or their confusion at your silence. And naturally, you feel the urge to explain, to justify the time you're spending alone, to make it easier for others to understand what you're building. But here's the truth. You don't owe anyone the blueprint for something that's still under construction. Every meaningful transformation happens in stages that the outside world can't interpret. What feels like isolation to them might actually be focus. What seems like a retreat is often realignment. Most people can't see the difference because they've never walked that road themselves. And when you pause your social life, skip casual conversations, and disappear from surface-level distractions, it unsettles them. But this isn't about them. It's about the foundation you're quietly laying beneath the noise. That's what Stoicism teaches. The more precious the process, the more it must be guarded. Not hidden out of shame, but protected out of clarity. When you share too early, you invite opinions from people who haven't earned the right to influence your direction. And opinions, especially from the wrong source, don't build, they weaken. A close friend of mine stopped coming to our weekend hangouts. At first we joked, said he was turning into a hermit. We missed him, but nobody really asked what he was doing. A year passed. Quietly, he had taught himself to code from scratch. He didn't talk about it. He didn't document the learning curve. He didn't ask for support. What did he build during that silence? A product that replaced his job, gave him freedom, and completely reset his life. And by the time people noticed, he no longer needed to explain anything. His results answered every question they never knew to ask. That's the power of building in silence. You keep the energy focused inward. You let the process breathe without interruption. And when the time is right, the outcome will say what words never could. There's a sacredness in effort that the world forgets. Everyone is eager to announce, to showcase, to narrate progress before it's mature. But just like you don't open the oven every 5 minutes while baking, you don't expose your transformation while it's still fragile. You protect it. You shield it from misunderstanding, from envy, from cheap applause. Because what you're creating is not for show, it's for strength. And strength doesn't need constant explanation. It just needs consistency. When you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. Ask, who am I trying to comfort? Am I trying to validate their confusion or prove that I haven't disappeared into failure? If so, let it go. You're not here to soothe people's insecurity about your change. You're here to grow. And real growth requires periods of silence, where your energy is entirely yours, where you're not leaking it through conversations that dilute your focus. You don't have to explain why you're sleeping earlier, reading more, spending time alone, saving money, and saying no. You don't have to justify the new rhythm you're creating, especially not to those who aren't walking with you. Your time is limited, so is your focus. And if you spend too much of it translating your discipline to others, you lose the very force that's making the change happen. The day will come when people will see the difference in how you carry yourself, how calm you are under pressure, how disciplined your choices feel. And by then, you won't need to explain where it came from. Because the answer is clear. It came from a season of silence, from the hours no one witnessed, from a decision to keep your mouth shut and your head down. You built it quietly. You grew when nobody asked you to. You moved forward without waiting for anyone's permission. And that's what makes it real. So the next time someone asks why you've changed, why you've gone quiet, why you've stepped away, just smile. You don't have to explain anything, because the version of you that's coming will speak for itself. And when it does, they'll finally understand what silence was really for. 6. Resisting the urge to share is a mental strength practice. Every time you improve a little, wake up earlier, skip a distraction, say no to comfort, there's a subtle itch inside you. A voice that says, tell someone, post it, let the world know you're winning. That itch is not about celebration. It's about recognition. And recognition is addictive. We live in a world that rewards exposure more than effort, where a photo of a journal means more than the words written inside it, where silence is confused with inaction and visibility is mistaken for value. But if you truly want to build a solid, unshakable life, you need to practice something most people can't: the ability to resist that urge to share. That's not secrecy. That's a strength. The Stoics trained for this, not because they didn't want to be known, but because they wanted to be in control. They saw restraint as power. They understood that every time you give in to the need to express, you surrender a little of your inner clarity. They believed that keeping things close doesn't make you closed off. It makes you focused. Think of it like training a dog not to bark at every sound. You're not killing its instinct, you're sharpening it, making it selective, precise. And that's exactly what mental strength requires. You don't eliminate your desire to be seen, you discipline it. You guide it. You make it wait until the work is real, deep, undeniable, and only then, if needed, let the result speak for itself. There's something deeply transformative that happens when you hold your win inside, even when it burns to be shared. You start feeding on consistency instead of attention. You stop chasing the dopamine of likes and start trusting the quiet rhythm of your routine. You begin to validate yourself, not because someone said good job, but because you know you showed up. You know you pushed through resistance. You know you didn't need applause to do what had to be done. That's how real confidence is built. Not through performance, but through private victories. And those private victories matter more than you think. Because once you get used to broadcasting every improvement, you become reliant on external reaction to stay motivated. You stop growing for growth's sake. You grow to be seen growing. And the second people stop noticing, you stop progressing. That's a fragile foundation. It can't survive pressure. It can't endure quiet seasons. But the person who learns to grow quietly, who makes moves with no announcement, builds routines without sharing them, and upgrades themselves without seeking praise, that person becomes unstoppable because they're not performing, they're evolving. It's tempting to believe that sharing makes things more real. If you declare your habit, it gives you accountability. But often, it does the opposite. It gives your brain a reward it hasn't earned yet. It tricks you into thinking progress has happened just because you talked about it. And the more often you do that, the less urgent the real work feels. Resisting that pattern, delaying the expression, sharpens your discipline. It forces you to stay inside the process. It humbles you into focusing on the grind instead of the story about the grind. And it teaches you something deeper, that your growth is enough. Not because others say it is, but because you've seen it take root in silence. The mornings you woke up when no one asked, the workouts you completed with no camera on, the meals you prepared, the books you read, the thoughts you rewrote, all done with zero audience. That's where power builds. That's where transformation stops being theory and starts becoming identity. You're no longer pretending to be someone disciplined. You are. The urge to share will always be there. But every time you resist it, you become more focused, more clear, more centered. You're not building for claps, you're building for clarity. You're not interested in performing growth, you're committed to living it. And living, it doesn't need a spotlight, it needs repetition, silence, patience, and the kind of deep internal validation that doesn't require confirmation from anyone else. So the next time you feel like posting the progress, the update, the victory, pause. Not because it's wrong to share, but because your strength is being tested. And with every quiet act you keep for yourself, you're proving something far more powerful than what a post could ever say. You're proving that the work is real. You're proving that your mission matters more than your image. And most of all, you're proving that you've outgrown the need to be noticed, because you've become someone worth noticing, without ever having to say a word. 7. Patience in silence is the tool of long-term victory. The reason most people quit isn't because they're soft, it's because they expect speed, not depth. They begin with fire. They start the morning early. They plan, they focus, they commit. But then a few days pass, maybe a week. The mirror doesn't change. The numbers stay the same. Nobody notices the shift, no praise, no proof. And in that quiet, they start to doubt. They confuse the silence with failure. But silence isn't failure. It's the soil where real transformation roots itself. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They knew that the loudest growth is often the most shallow. That great things the kind that last, don't shout when they grow. They move beneath the surface, away from noise, protected by patience. Patience doesn't mean slowness, it means strength. And it's only developed when you learn to keep showing up, even when nothing around you looks different. Think of an oak tree. It takes years before it even looks impressive. At first, it's just a stick in the dirt. No one points at it, no one praises it, but beneath, the roots are working, quietly, relentlessly. Compare that to weeds. They sprout fast, stretch high, grab attention, and die just as quickly. That's the same with shallow habits. Fast starts don't last. What matters is whether the roots are deep, whether the rhythm is consistent, whether the work continues when no one is clapping. And maybe that's where you are now. You might be rebuilding your habits, waking up early, journaling, staying disciplined, and no one sees it. You might be cutting expenses, saving a little, skipping short-term pleasure, and no one claps. You might be healing emotionally, learning new skills, sitting through uncomfortable changes, and there's no spotlight on that. But time sees you, and your results remember you. Every quiet effort is not lost. It's being stored, accumulated, cemented into the future you're building. You're not wasting time, you're investing it in a way that the impulsive never will. The world teaches impatience. Everything is now. Instant access, instant success, instant feedback. But that environment doesn't build discipline. It builds desperation, and desperation never sustains anything. The Stoics trained their minds to stay steady in the long game. They didn't just resist impulse, they understood its cost. Every time you abandon the process just because the result didn't show up fast enough, you break trust with yourself. You reinforce the idea that effort must be seen to be real. But effort that's unseen, that's the foundation of everything powerful. The body you want, the clarity you seek, the financial freedom you dream about, they're not born from rush. They're born from rhythm, from the decision to stay when it's boring, to repeat the reps when it's invisible, to trust the silence even when the noise is tempting. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means the real work is happening where you can't measure it yet. You can't track the rewiring of your thoughts. You can't quantify the emotional strength building every time you say no to something weak. You can't photograph the kind of self-control that's growing inside you when you keep your routine without reward. That's why you need patience, because this isn't a sprint. It's a slow burn. And what you build slowly, you build forever. You're not after temporary progress. You're after long-term identity. And identity doesn't shift in a day. It shifts when silence becomes your lab and patience becomes your hammer. Every time you resist the urge to quit just because it's taking too long, you sharpen your edge. Every time you stay the course without applause, you become harder to shake. You won't need a boost of motivation, you'll have discipline. And that's what separates the talkers from the doers, the starters from the finishers, the dreamers from the builders. You won't need to rush anymore because you'll realize that nothing great blooms fast. And the fact that it takes time is not a flaw. It's the proof it's real. So if you're in the middle of that silent season, keep going. Don't second-guess your pace. Don't search for signs to justify your commitment. The results will come, and when they do, they won't be small. They'll be the kind of results that are rooted too deep to be shaken, too clear to be ignored, too earned to be copied. Because you didn't just grow, you endured. You didn't just change, you stayed. You used patience as a weapon. You trusted the silence. And now the victory doesn't need to scream. It just stands, quiet, solid, unshakable. Just like you. The quiet path isn't popular, but it's powerful. In a world obsessed with proving, sharing, and explaining, choosing silence is an act of mastery. When you stop announcing your goals, when you let go of the need to be seen, when you build quietly and win without noise, that's when your discipline becomes real. That's when your results speak louder than your words. Remember, every silent decision you make, waking early, staying focused, protecting your peace, is a brick in the foundation of something unshakable. You don't need applause, you need clarity. You don't need a stage, you need consistency. That's how you build inner growth habits that last. That's how you train your mind to focus in silence and win in public. If this message resonated with you, tell us, what are you building in silence right now? What habits, goals, or quiet victories are you keeping to yourself, knowing that one day they'll speak for you? Drop your story in the comments. And if you're committed to living with quiet strength and mental clarity, make sure to like this video and subscribe. we're just getting started.